If ever there were a year the Grinch stole Christmas, 2020 would be it. So much of what makes Christmas meaningful is lost to us this year. Celebrating with family and friends, sharing Christmas dinner with a house full of people, exchanging presents in person, coming to church and singing carols by candlelight. We know the vaccines are coming. We know the pandemic is coming to an end. But until then, here we are. Me and Stephen, our audiovisual whiz, alone in an empty church, and you at home in front of your screens. You might have heard me say that this year has felt to me like a year of exile. We've been taken out of our familiar places, our comfortable routines, and flung into the wilderness. We may not have left the house for weeks, but it feels like we are very far from home, very far from the people and places and communities that used to be the center of our lives. That's painful, and it's disorienting. We may not know where to find God these days. We're used to God being at the center, at this historic church in the heart of Worthington, in grand cathedrals with impressive architecture and art. That's why those houses of worship are at the center of our cities, our societies, because that's where we think God should be, at the center. That's what people thought 2,000 years ago as they waited for the Messiah, the Son of God, to be born. Surely the Messiah would be born in Rome. Rome is the center of the known world. It's the capital of an empire of 80 million people that stretches from modern-day Portugal in the west, to Holland in the north, to Syria in the east, to Egypt in the south. Rome is where armies are launched, and laws decreed, and power negotiated, and money made. Rome is the center of art and literature and religion. An emperor in Rome orders a census, and people thousands of miles away rush to do his bidding. Rome is the room where it happens. There are palaces in Rome where a mother can give birth in luxury, cushioned cradles to hold a new baby, rich clothes to wrap him, running hot water to bathe him, servants to wash his diapers and tend his mother as she heals. Rome has everything you could ever want. That's why Luke begins the story of Christmas in Rome, right? Surely the Messiah would be born there. If not Rome, maybe the province of Syria. The capital Damascus is not as grand as Rome, but it's a center in its own right. It's one of the oldest continuously inhabited places on earth. It's the seat of a Roman governor, a city of temples and grand houses and markets and fresh, clean water. The new baby and his mother would have all the comforts they needed in Syria. Surely the Messiah would be born there. But Bethlehem? Really? There's nothing there. Sure, David, the greatest king of ancient Israel, was born in Bethlehem, but that was literally 1,000 years ago. Whatever temples and palaces and luxuries there are nearby are 5 miles away in Jerusalem, or 3 miles the other direction at King Herod's hilltop fortress. Bethlehem does have an inn, but that's it. Why would the Messiah be born there? As forgettable as Bethlehem is, the Messiah isn't even born in the inn. The inn is full. This poor woman has traveled 85 miles from home on a donkey or walking at 9 months pregnant, and there isn't even a bed for her. She's young, maybe 14 or 15. She's not married yet. She doesn't have her mother or her aunts with her to wipe her brow and tell her when to push. All she's got is a scared first-time father and a pallet of straw in a stable. The best crib they can find is a manger. This is so far from the center of the world, it's laughable. It's at the edge of empire, in a settlement so small it's barely a village, in an outbuilding where animals are kept. Surely this is no way and no place for the Messiah to be born. Except that the periphery, the wilderness, the edge of empire is where God is most easily found. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob all meet God while they're miles from anywhere else. Moses hears God's call from a burning bush out in the middle of nowhere. God leads God's people out of slavery in Egypt, the center of the world back then, to the edge of empire where they can be free. Prophets like Elijah, Isaiah, John the Baptist all experience God's presence in the wilderness. The angel Gabriel appears to Mary in Nazareth, a poor backwater village that has nothing to recommend it. God has room to work in these places, the nowheres of the world. And there is enough silence to hear God speak there. The clamor and noise and power of a city like Rome would drown out God's voice. Empire wants to be the center. Empire would snuff God out if it could. The nowhere places are where our need for God is most apparent, where we recognize we depend on God for every breath, every sip of water, every morsel of bread. The edge of the world is where we look for God and find God. Yet God becomes human in the very center of humanity, among the poor, the oppressed, the forgotten, the brokenhearted, the abandoned. If the Messiah had been born in a palace, if he'd been pampered and cushioned like your average royal baby, he would have been separate from the vast majority of humankind. He would never have understood the reality of our existence, our pain, our suffering, our capacity for joy. Only as a person who lives like most people can God take on human flesh and live as one of us. So God chooses a stable in Bethlehem for the Messiah's birth. Out here, the only ones who notice the new baby are the ones looking for the Messiah, the shepherds, who've seen the angels and heard them praise God. Rome doesn't know Jesus yet. It will. It will know Jesus enough to kill him, but that's 30 years in the future. Here in Bethlehem and later in Nazareth, the Messiah can be born and grow up safely, protected by the anonymity of these nowhere towns. And God chooses an unmarried teenager, a poor girl, to be the Messiah's mother, and a bewildered, nervous carpenter to be his stepfather. They'll raise Jesus as an ordinary kid in an ordinary family, so that he is a human being like any other, truly God as one of us. This year of exile, this year we are cast out of the center to the edges of the world, this may be the year we appreciate Christmas as if for the first time. Because it is to people like us, lonely, fearful, scattered, exhausted, that the Messiah is born. And it is in places like ours, ordinary, out of the way, not worth noticing, that the Messiah is born. God comes to us where we are, this year perhaps as never before. We can't find God in a church building right now, but we find God among us, as one of us. Jesus is born in the stable of our living rooms. He is laid in the mangers of our hearts. The angel choirs sing their praises in the heavens of our everyday lives. Where we are is where God chooses to be born. The Grinch was determined to shut down the Christmas celebrations of Whoville. He thought Christmas was about the tree and the stockings and the presents and the roast beast. But when the Grinch stole Christmas, every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. The Grinch hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. So it is for us. God never meant for Jesus to be born at the center of the world with great ceremony and comfort. God chose an out-of-the-way place, a humble place, a place like ours for the Messiah's birth. So we too can sing this night. For to us, with us, for us, the Messiah, the Son of God, is born.